Well, everybody, welcome back to the Trick Podcast with Joey and Goso TV. Where is my Goso Bell? On this beautiful Monday afternoon, it is almost 5 p.m., 4:45 here Pacific in the Long Beach, California, Los Angeles area. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to this episode. Talking today about the future of hope and peace and purpose. Hope, peace, purpose, love, grace, stability, courage, strength, all the big ones. What am I learning about how to find that? What hasn't been working? What isn't providing those things anymore? So leave me a comment below. Tell me how you are doing. I believe that the chat is working. So you can just say hello, whether you are on Instagram Live, which is my favorite platform these days. If you are there, welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is David Trigg. If I am new to you, or if you're watching me on Facebook or on YouTube and all the rest, Twitch, Periscope, Twitter, etc., welcome. Or on my podcast too. By the way, do you know that I have a podcast? You can just listen to it. It's not the same as this. Sometimes I do take the audio from the videos, but most of the time I record a separate episode along the same lines of purpose and faith and, of course, music. All the things I love, but so I had a really good conversation with my family this morning about what we've been through as a family and, of course, as a society the last 24 months, the last 4 years, the last 10 years, the last 10 years. And it was a very good conversation that talked about the exhaustion that we feel with church, with work, school, with politics, all the things that we've been exposed to over the last, as I said, 10 years. Maybe for some it's less, for others it's more. And of course, as we were speaking, we all have different perspectives, but the same story. We all are of different ages. Our young adults are now in their they're 18, 20, and 22. Of course, we are at midlife, my wife and I, and our parents are in that third stage of life. So we had a really good conversation about just all these different perspectives. And I showed them a drawing. I don't have it here, but you can look it up. It's called The Voyage of Life. It just talks about the different stages of life and the similarities between stages. And so it was interesting because I think that at least when it comes to church and faith and spirituality, the generation that we grew up in was all about excellence and about having the big show. Now, young people love that as well, of course. They love the glitz and glamour, you could say. But I think that what's deeper than that for them is a sense of peace and purpose, because their lives they have a lot going on. We all do, of course, and this is where we have a lot in common. I think one of the things that came out of our conversation was how they aren't as stuck on the past or the current problems as we tend to be as adults. So for them, if they don't like something, they move on from it. They're not so eager, this might be good or bad, to, let's just call it stick it out. Because they do have their devices and social media and the internet, and so they see that there are many possibilities for income, stability, future, purpose, peace. And so when it comes to the church, a lot of their friends, they don't see the church as a place that provides stability or peace or purpose. I don't mean the values of a church, but the system of church. They find the same problems at work. Yeah, maybe they have a paycheck at their jobs, but what they really value is peace and purpose and community, love, relationship, intimacy. Not being anonymous, and yet being with people that will build into them. All these things that we in the church or as families, we could say, well, of course, we all want the same thing. But the systems that we live in these days have been ruined, you could say, by a lot of painful things, rhetoric, people, politics, all the things I mentioned. And as far as us, me and us adults, the the weight of all of these things has been wearisome. I mean, none of us has to be told how hard it is these days to feel like you have stability at work, physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, politically. I mean, all our systems, all our gauges are all going like this, like at Disneyland and Toontown. It's just nothing that we used to count on as stable is stable anymore, including our vaccination system. I mean, it's amazing how something like a vaccine that could save our lives is something that people debate over. But that's where we are. And that's just one example. You have, I was watching a content creator, a guy named Tom, and he's a speaker at different conferences that deal with technology. And he was saying that he's not sure he's going to go to this conference coming up in August or October because it's a conference that attracts people from all over the world. And even though he's been vaccinated and his wife, we know what's happening worldwide. And so I get it, right? So even those things that we want to do, we don't feel safe doing, vaccinated or not. And this whole thing, just speaking of the pandemic, seems to still be around. And some people, especially, I love talking to the older generation, they say that the last time this happened, it took 2 years, which would be next March of 2022. So let's say by Easter of next year is when perhaps things will get better. So that means we have still, whatever, it's 8, 9 months to go. And so now, young people, I love the 20-year-olds, the 18 to 30-year-olds, let's just say, all that Gen Y generation, beautiful young people, my kids included, of course, and a lot of other young people that I have the privilege of working with, musicians, artists, entrepreneurs, content creators, just regular people that go to work 9 to 5. They, as I said, they're not stuck on the old systems. They really want to change the world. They also, as far as obviously our kids and many of the kids that we know, they want to love Jesus, but they don't want the systems. Back to what I was saying, the systems that have pained, in our case, their parents, their friends, their mentors, the lack of community love, political stuff that they don't agree with, all of these things that young people notice, not just in their local communities or churches, but globally or nationwide in terms of the US, and Trump, for example, and all that, the horror that happened there with the church. Young people, those that grew up in the church, they reject that. And those that didn't grow up in the church or that grew up Catholic, they definitely aren't going back. And yet, they want purpose, meaning, love, all the things that we all need, right? And then again, the exhaustion of us parents and adults to try to keep these systems afloat. Financially, it's difficult, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Friendships are ruined, changed. I've lost so many friends the last 2 years over politics, which has been very difficult. What I see as the hope and as steps forward is really amazing and really beautiful. And I'm beginning to get excited again for the first time in maybe a long time about the future. So back in, this is 2021, maybe it was about 2010, so 10 years ago or so, 11 years ago, we had left our church in Colorado and we were coming back here to California. And when we were in the middle of moving and packing and finding new jobs, there were maybe like 3 months that we built something in our basement, because in Colorado, homes have basements, which I love, something called Neighbors Abbey. And then we eventually called it, I think it was just called Neighbors Abbey, yeah. And so we invited neighbors, but eventually it was just our family. And normally, of course, we would go to church every Sunday. I mean, we both have worked, meaning our family and I and Rochelle's parents, we've all worked in churches most of our lives. We're church people and educators. But for that month or 3 months, we had Neighbors Abbey, which was a sacred place where we had church at home church, you could call it, I guess. And it was beautiful. No pressure, no expectations of who's coming or who's not coming. I wasn't all worked up over, is my message good? Are people happy? Do I have to meet with someone who's upset? It was just us as a family and these prayers and these songs. And in some ways, that's where I see the future of the church going, towards these simple communities. Now, we are at a church that is traditional, meaning the facility and the systems, although we're going through a major change, like most churches. And I feel privileged that we are in the middle of this major change, because I think that the idea of a Neighbors Abbey, of a simple church, is what we need to do. And what's beautiful, it is no longer just for young people. It is because of the pandemic and all the things I've mentioned, we all are needing a Neighbors Abbey. An abbey meaning a sacred place, neighbors meaning just people, common people. I remember my friend years ago built a church called Common Church. And he literally had it at his house, where all the house church system or network movement started in England, I believe, like 15, 20 years ago, and then it came here to the U.S., and then it kind of faded away. I wonder if, well, no, I don't wonder. I long to build a simple church at my church. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that we measure on the things that people need versus building a thing that we are used to, meaning those of us that are in power or that our traditions have built or that we've been doing the last 10, 20 years, and expecting people to come to that, or wanting to compete against the coolest, newest church that has the lights and the best and the latest. And those things are always going to be important to me. I love good music, like all of us do. I love to perform, meaning to sing quality music. So some things are just, I think, always going to be important. To me, at least. But as far as the rest, meaning what we would call discipleship and the event of church gathering, that Sunday hour, let's just focus on that for now. And then, of course, love, relationship, I mean, all the rest, right? Serving the poor, serving others. But let's just start with production. Right now, it's just me on guitar and my son playing the cajon. And we've had amazing production in the past because I love that kind of stuff. But the last few weeks, we've only been meeting 3 or 4 weeks first we had this video going. And even though it was well done and it was my friends playing, it just wasn't real, right? It was a video. So I said, no, I'll just play. And my son, David, and sometimes I'll have a young girl from our church that will sing with me. And we just sit on stools. I preach from the floor. I've actually thought of preaching on a stool from the floor, not sitting on the floor, but standing on the floor, meaning instead of on stage. Instead of like, boom, it's more of a conversation. Not quite answering questions. It's still preaching and presenting, but even that, I'm wondering how I can move that to a different kind of, what is it, comment? Oh, say thank you. Hello, my brother Rigo. Amen. Love you too, my brother Rigo. Much love to you, my brother. So moving towards a conversation, not necessarily, as I said, although I'm open to it, answering questions, but more of a maybe a storytelling of the great things that God is doing versus just preaching and, like modern day preaching. It used to be in the 50s all about Bible knowledge, right? Then it was about relevant topics. And then the last maybe 10 years, it's about inspiration and motivation. I think that where our society and our global society, I don't know if it's moved there, but it definitely needs, what it needs is contemplation and hope. And what Jesus always has done, which is healing. I don't mean healing Benny Hinn style. I don't mean healing as in a powerful event, although that could be. But I mean healing as in conversing, as in crying together, as in a table talk. You know how like there's a program on TV called Red Table, the Red Table, as in a conversation with a church that is small. And so our church right now is maybe 25 people, 30, 50. But the system that I had in my head the last 3 years has been of a church of 10,000. Exhausting. It's been exhausting. So the pandemic and now just these shifts that are happening in my body, in my system, and especially as I said, young people these days, we're dreaming of a simple church community where we have less of the trappings and more of the simplicity of love and humility in that hour or in that hour and a half on Sundays. And then from there, instead of having traditional small groups or life groups, which are beautiful, I've been teaching on Thursday nights through Zoom in Spanish, although I had one in English as well. I think it was a few months ago. A class which is more of a training on spiritual healing and biblical deliverance. It's called Life Changers. And my mom has taught it. I had another friend and myself, of course. I had a couple people that would lead it with me. We had 2 groups, as I said, all on Zoom. And I think that even post-pandemic, we're going to stay on Zoom only because of for example, one of the girls who comes, she works on Thursday nights at a restaurant. And so if it was a meeting at church, she couldn't come. And I think she works most evenings. And so, but because it's online, she puts her phone there at the restaurant. I don't know if she's a cashier or she's a cook, I'm not sure. And she turns on the stream and my teachings and our conversation and our prayers and people crying and people smiling and, laughing and crying and just the honesty of this course that I'm teaching called Life Changers. And not only is her life being changed, and she actually opened her heart to Jesus for the first time about 4 weeks ago, but her coworkers are now listening in. I have another friend who also comes, and she sometimes, I don't know if she picks up her husband, or I'm not sure exactly if they are out and about on Thursday nights. I'm not sure, but sometimes she's at home. But like last week, for example, we had a party and I met her for the first time in real life. And she was telling me that her husband, unbeknownst to me, because, they don't always turn on the camera, which is fine, he always listens to my talks. And so when I met him, he was like, oh, yeah, I listen to your talks and your microphone is so nice and it sounds so good. And then last week, after that party, they were driving and they turned on the camera and there he was. And they were both in the car listening to the training while they were driving. Maybe they were coming home. Maybe they were picking up their child, going to the store. I don't know. And you might think, well, that's nothing new. Yeah, we're not talking about new things. As Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun, but it's the intentionality. I've been asking God, Lord, what is it that you want our spiritual community to focus on? Not so much like, okay, obviously we know that it's Jesus, the gospel. Obviously we know the basics: love God, love others. So we know those things. But the systems, the mechanics, the how, we know the what, we know the why, but the how. And so these are glimpses. Another glimpse was last week. Our son plays in a band with his friends in a garage. I think they were just here a little bit ago. And they've been asking me if I could teach them how to play and sing. They actually are pretty good, but a couple of them just want some tips on how to sing and how to do this and that. And you know, I love music. I have a studio and I love teaching. Now, look at how things have to change. So for the last 3 months, I've been calling my friends to help me play music at church. So I've been trying to build a worship team right at church. And because of schedules and because of who knows, it hasn't happened. It's just me, as I said, and my son, which is great. At the same time, these 4 or 5 young people that love music, that don't go to church, are here in my house like 2-3 times a week. And I've been like, I don't know if I really want to teach them music because, you know, I'm trying to build my little church. You see the irony in how God is so gracious and how he is shifting my mindset, and I think shifting so many things around us. I was listening to a psychologist talking about how we don't always, or how there are changes in life at midlife, quarter life, where we're lost. Like, what am I supposed to do, God? Maybe you know what I'm talking about. I'm definitely going through that season right now. Like what I was listening also to Eva Longoria, you know, and she's famous and she's done so many things, a millionaire, blah, blah, but she's saying that at 50, I think she doesn't know what to do next. My point is that this one psychologist was asked, can we skip that whole seasons of life where we don't know what we're doing? And he's saying, well, we could. It's just we don't always want to. Because what it requires is for us to love the things that we already have. And sometimes we just don't want to love the things that are already around us. And that's my point, back to the band. God, I'm here trying to build my church with trying to find a band, right? A worship team. No luck. At the same time, you see, right? Guess what God wants me to do? To help these kids that are in my house that love me because I've known them since they were like 5 or 6 years old. They're friends of our son. They're all graduating high school, and because they're now on their way to college, before they leave, I mean, isn't this just moving? Before they leave, maybe to never see their friends again, because, you know, college, right, is such a change in life. They are here asking me to help them, and I'm like, no, I have to build my church. Maybe, I was telling David, maybe you are the pastor of that church called Garage Band Church, and I'm supposed to help you lead them to music, to what they love, to what they need, which are voice lessons. Some of them rap. I have a studio at church. And through that love, for them to meet Jesus, for them to know Jesus, for them to be with the church, meaning with us. But it's a shift that God has maybe precipitated through this pandemic. Every one of us is feeling the same thing. We're all going through similar things, the same thing. The precipitation of change that suddenly it just came, boom. The disappointment of the whole Trump and all of the politics that the church unfortunately just sunk their teeth into, and so many people just went head over heels, and how it hurt so many young people and adults like myself because of the politicization of the church. Of course, this pandemic that destroyed our dreams, our communities, our relationships, you name it, right? Financially, your job, your goals, your dreams, your parents, mental health, you name it, our churches. Everything has shifted. This was like the big one here in LA, right? The big earthquake. But this was a global big one. And yet, these seeds of glory, these showers of blessing, these, maybe they're not showers, maybe they're just little drops of blessing are popping up everywhere. I'm sure they're popping up everywhere around your life. We just have to open our eyes. Another story, these moments of grace that are pointing the way. Last week, I have this class, as I said, it's in Spanish on Thursday nights. And I couldn't teach it because I had some other stuff to do, but I was a part of it. I just couldn't teach. So my mom taught it, and she's amazing. So at the end of the class, well, no, my niece, her granddaughter, joined the class, all in Spanish. They live in a third world country. Hello, hello, hola, 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 un saludo, un saludo. Un gran saludo a todos, un cariñoso saludo. Hola, buenas tardes. Hola, 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 Teresita, un gran saludo, un gran saludo. So, everyone is doing, so they're teaching this class, right? My mom and my niece, and we were talking about fear and about difficult mental strength, how our minds can deceive us and can lie to us. And then at the end of the class, my niece, who's 20 and who had a baby with her husband just like 6 months ago, started to cry, saying, I was so afraid, but yet God helped my mind to remain strong. And she just cried like a baby. 2-3 weeks before that, we had two people come to know Jesus through that class. 4 weeks before that, we had someone we were talking about church discipline, not church, but God, how he disciplines us, right? And someone said, God is disciplining me. And now I understand that he's doing it because he loves me. And she just began to pour out her heart. And so all these moments are like, wow, this is where God is. Yeah, maybe my church isn't a church, or your church or the next church isn't a church of 10,000 because like at least half of my people don't, because of fear and because of all these things, they're not ready to go back. Here in LA, we're seeing another surge spike with all this Delta stuff. And I've been vaccinated, my whole family, but people, please be vaccinated. Please get out there and get vaccinated. Unless obviously you have some health condition and so our churches aren't packed. My friends that have churches or had churches of 1,000, now they're at 50% capacity, 25% capacity. And it's not that people don't need love, community, peace, purpose. Of course, those things, they never change, but it's the systems, it's all these things. I mean, we're just in this major shift that is just taken us by storm. But these are seeds of grace, moments of hope. There was another moment on Sunday where my beautiful uncle, speaking of family, I love him. He's my favorite uncle, I always say. And he's been online with us for the last 2 years. And then 2 weeks ago, I said, hey, Theo, can you help us with OBS, which is the software that we use to live stream church stuff? And he's like, sure, I'll learn. So I spent 3-4 hours with him last week. On Sunday, he came to the physical building for the very first time. I've been at that church, which I love, for 5 years. It just hadn't happened. There he was. It was such a moving moment to see him, not so much just learning the systems and the cameras and all that, but being there with his nephew. That familial relationship. With me playing guitar, my son, his nephew, I guess also, his cousin, I don't know how that works. My mom, as I mentioned, all these relationships, the sense of family, people in their cars listening, getting saved. 2 weeks ago, we rented a pool on the lawn and we put it on the lawn of the church, outside on the lawn. Sounds weird. On the lawn of the church. And I baptized my son, as well as 3 other people. It was beautiful. Because of Instagram, and I love Instagram, someone recorded us, or maybe, yeah, I didn't. Obviously, I was baptizing him. Someone recorded us. I didn't, of course, even know what I was doing, but I hugged him at the end. Like I hug my son every day because I love my son, and I tell him that all the time, even though he's 18 and a foot taller than me. After I baptized him and he came out of the water, I gave him a hug. And people have commented on that hug like nothing else, saying, I could tell that you really love your son. And he hugged me back. That's why I love Instagram, because you have these things. My point is that We rented that pool for $300. We didn't have any cool lights or anything. We did have a nice little tent, and it was simple, but it was well done. It was on Instagram. It was recorded. That moment touched the world, you could say. And God was present. And so all those things, all these moments have been glimpses into where I think God is going. God is moving his people, these church systems, our church, us as a family, us as individuals. On Sunday, I have one of my beautiful seniors came up to me, and we were talking about Jesus and did he have a body in heaven or not, and all these awesome things. Then she wrote me a note, an email this morning, and she said, I love the music because it was nice and peaceful. I felt the same way. I was singing. We did 4 songs, 1, 2, 3, maybe 5. And the last 2, maybe even the last one, it was so peaceful. It was a peace like I hadn't felt in a long time, personally or in church. And I do music and preach every Sunday. It was simple. We were using just some basic stuff, beautifully done. It was well done, but it was simple. It was community. It was love. I'm not against, of course, the lights and all that stuff. And if I can be honest, I still want that. I still want to get the fanciest stuff and think that that's how I'm going to reach people. But my soul is longing for peace, contemplation, quietness, community. Rochelle was saying, my wife, is that maybe we have like a taco Tuesday or a taco stand every Sunday so that people can spend time together after church. Not after the service, but in the middle of the service. I don't know how we'll do that. Maybe like the baptisms. Maybe we just pause at an hour in and we don't just say, hey, if you want, stick around. But we make that meal a part of church, like communion. I mean, obviously it's just fun, but we make that. I was thinking of how our kids, we dismiss the kids to go and do their own worship time. Why don't we just have the kids in the service and they just do their thing on stage? Or forget stage. Why don't we all worship in a circle? And I don't know if you've seen, I think the ministry is called Maverick. Is that correct? Upper Room? I don't know. I forget the name of this really gifted young man who sings online and on YouTube. And what I love, besides that it's a bunch of young people worshiping Jesus, they're all standing in one room. There are no pews. There's no stage. Now it's well done. This guy is a Grammy Award winner. So I value that. And young people value the Instagram church. But the hang-ups are gone. All of this huge mess of we have to find someone to do this and that in planning center and all the hiccups and the hang-ups and the pews and plates and all the nickels and whatever, the dimes and how much money came in and all of the traditions, good or bad. And instead, there's a simplicity to what they're doing. And we've done, like, for example, communion. We did that through the little, like the built-in cups now. And I do miss kind of the whole walking up, but it's been fine. The way we give, like many churches, we now do it online or on the way out. And it's been fine. It's given us more time in the service to pray, to talk, to hear God's word, to worship. Things that, of course, we all want, but, back to the hang-up and the systems of church, we are trying to remove. I don't know if we're trying to remove. We have been forced to remove, but it's been a gift of grace. I think it's going to lower my anxiety, my stress, the stress of my wife, of our kids, of our church. It's going to bring healing to those who are in the room, because it's not about the noise or the lights or the this or the that, or about who's going to do this and the machine of worship or the machine of church. And I wonder, as I said, if young and old are going to, like the Bible says, have new dreams and dream new dreams once again. I was thinking of if I'm off a Sunday, who's going to preach for me? And normally you want to get some amazing preacher who's better than you, which I'm fine with. I have this beautiful old man in his late 70s. I'm going to have him preach. I can't wait. I actually want to just not preach and just be there in the front row just to hear him speak because of his age and his love for God's word and the fact that he remains at that church, and even though most of his friends have passed away. I want to hear what he has to say about God and open that beautiful Bible that he has that's 5 inches thick and has been written on 1,000 times. Wouldn't you want to be near that man? I do. We have a piano I love to play. We have a nice Nord keyboard. Again, we love nice stuff. I love nice microphones, great cameras. But I love nice cameras. I want it to be Instagram ready because that's the new bulletin. It's Instagram. And so, but as far as the hang up of church and the expense of church and the stress of church, the systems, I think that's where, by the grace of God, he's eliminating a lot of that, at least in our context, so that we can have simple church. There are so many stories. Maybe one last one. Speaking of music, I have on Monday nights tonight a group of young people who come to the church, but not to church, to my studio, where I have all of my production gear. I make hip hop beats. I produce, I record, I work with artists. And on every Monday night, this group of 2 or 3, 4 guys are coming together. They're from a church in the area, our partner church that's now meeting with us on our site. It's been beautiful. It's been amazing. But that's not only is that amazing, but last week, speaking again of our friends, our daughter's friends, a young man who she has known since they were 5 and 6. He was here waiting for our daughters. And they were going to go out and eat. Actually, it was him and his friend. And because, because they know me and they know that I love music, oh, Pastor Trig, Mr. Trigueros, where's your gear? They said, because I moved it to church. I said, well, I moved it to the church. They're like, can we come to Monday nights? Because I was telling them how we have 2 or 3 amazing young people who are recording now and using all my beats and stuff. Can we come? I said, sure. These are young people who don't go to church. They don't do traditional church. They come from Catholic backgrounds. And they're like, we want nothing to do with religion and with all these systems and all the politics and all that stuff. But I said, yeah, I have a studio. They're like, can we come? So I don't know if tonight or next week, I can't wait to get together with them. And that to me is what the gospel is about, what the Spirit is doing through. That's my context. Of course, we all have different gifts and different contexts, but there's no way that God has deconstructed first the system of church, my system of thinking of how and what church is supposed to be, my ambition of church. That's probably the biggest thing. And he's bringing around me daily, it seems like, if not weekly, glimpses of grace. I wonder, what are the glimpses of grace in your life? I want to invite you to pray, to come if you are weary and if you're looking for purpose and peace. If you want to tell your story through rap, through music, through a garage band, through entrepreneurship, if you need mental health support, counseling, support, grace. If you have questions about homosexuality, about abortion, about politics and Trump and all that we've been through, about the pandemic, and I'm not saying I have all the answers, but what God is calling me and my wife and our family to do is to create an environment of grace and conversation and non-judgment. 10, 20 years. And I'm excited. It's a new day, and it's a community called Neighbors Abbey. It's ironic because my church is called Neighborhood Christian. So I wonder if this whole thing of neighbor is really God's heart. Of course we know it is. Love your neighbor as yourself. Leave me a comment. Go to Instagram, speaking of, at David Trigg. Follow me there. And if you want to know more about my music or voice lessons, guitar lessons, piano lessons, music production, rap, hip-hop, lo-fi, EDM, worship, mental health classes, the life-changing groups that I was telling you about, biblical deliverance, spiritual deliverance, Sunday morning, those are the things that I love to do. So let me know. Thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye. Let's see. How do I stop this?